Now I am very excited to welcome back a fantastic college basketball capper, awesome friend of the show, and Mr. Josh Nunn from the Action Network. You can follow Josh on X at Step on a Duck. Josh, the madness has finally arrived. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back on the show. I appreciate it. It's my probably my favorite 2 weeks of the college basketball season. The NCAA tournament in and of itself is the greatest betting event in America, but I love conference championship week. You have teams playing with desperation. The season is over if they lose. You have many teams that have worked so hard for years to try to get to this point. Some have been able to get to the tournament, some haven't, but I've often said that you don't want as much chaos these next 2 weeks. You want these mid-level and lower level leagues to send their best to the NCAA tournament, so then we do get the chaos in the tournament. So I'm kind of going to be secretly rooting for many of these leagues to go chalk. However, that doesn't prohibit me from getting in there and looking at the betting opportunities and fading some of these favorites if the situation calls for it. So I'm excited to get into some of these conference tournaments today with you, and we better strap in because there's going to be a lot happening over the next 2 weeks.
100%. There is going to be a ton happening, and there's a lot of protocols to go through, and it's different. And I love it too because making the big dance is the Super Bowl for these teams because they're winning in their conference, not just that, and they get a chance to dance. It's just such dual levels of excitement. And look, they're not expecting to win. Most of these teams, obviously, if you're a blue blood and been in this thing, and your name's Duke or Kentucky or Alabama even is good now, and the big names that we've been through, Houston, Michigan this year, Arizona, they have more of those expectations, but this is about the little man and just getting to the big dance and getting to travel and experience all the amazement of it. And that's what I love too. But when it comes to betting, that sure it has a little bit of I would say of an art form in a way. There is some best practices that I'd like to go over too, but I'll ask you first, what do you like to do to prepare for these conference tournaments?
Well, the number one thing I would say is it's important to analyze team performances throughout the totality of the regular season. Just because a team won their regular season does not necessarily make them a superlative, overwhelming favorite in the league. In the case of the Patriot League, that does hold true, in my opinion, with Navy, who is about 10 points better than anyone else in the Patriot League. But if you look at the ASUN or the Horizon League or some of those leagues, you have teams 2 through 7 that maybe finished a game or two back. Maybe the favorite won a bunch of close games. And these teams will be favored to win the conference tournament and priced accordingly. But there's much more value in some of these long shot teams. And then the other thing is some of these positions, 2 through 6 or so, there's really not a lot of separation in the strength or talent level of these teams, but there's a huge discrepancy in the pricing. And so I think you can find value there. But I've harped on this for years, specifically about college football, but it applies here more than anywhere. Shop around and find the best prices. You can really find some pricing discrepancies top to bottom in these conference tournaments. So don't limit yourself to just one or two books. Go find the best prices, the best odds, and give yourself the best chance to be successful.
100%. There is lots of shopping involved, and you can get like a 30-1 and a 45-1 that I got yesterday. Navy got ahead of that one at -120. It's -180 in this book now. There is all kinds of value when you shop, and that's just it's all about. You should never hold yourself accountable just to one. It's really interesting for them making these numbers because there's nothing to go by. It used to kind of be like wait for one book to do it, and sometimes it spirals out there. But there's not a lot. They have to really figure out the odds. I think this is a big challenge to some of these bookmakers, which gives us more of an advantage in these situations. So I'm excited to talk to you about it. But I have a few best practices as well. Obviously, the normal stuff. You check injuries. I like to see how hot they are since February 1st. I do that from Mark Torvik. I do an efficiency rating since February 1st, and I can see like who's really good right now. Because sometimes it takes teams a while to gel, just like you've seen with some of the UConn teams. The first UConn championship team, it took them a while to gel. Look how long it took Florida this year to gel, right? Since February 1st, you kind of look at that. I also like to look at money line rollovers in case that's better. Now you have to remember to do it by setting an alarm in your phone every morning. Otherwise, you won't do it. If you put it off, you'll screw it up. But that sometimes is better, but sometimes it's not too. You just have to remember if the favorite, if you're betting like a second or third favorite rollover, and all of a sudden the favorite gets bounced early, you're not getting that juicy plus number you are at the very end of that tournament. Away from home, some of these tournaments are not even played in a neutral site, and they're played at home. So you're wondering why this team might be really looking from a numbers perspective so big. And then you think about the whole fact that the tournament reseeds, which not all tournaments do, but some reseeds. Then you're like, make it so much harder for the bad teams to get in, or at least the more challenged teams that haven't won a lot of games. Maybe injuries got them. It's much more challenging for them, and it's much more easier for the bigger names in the top 1 or 2 seeds in that case. So those are important as well. I believe the Horizon League reseeds. Also check if the team is in the tournament regardless. That sometimes is interesting. And then check to see if there's a team that might be suspended from postseason play. Now, I'd still usually say they still want to win their conference, but the numbers might move too much one way or the other. So those are my best practices, Doug.
I think it's really important not to overlook something that you said there. The conference tournament format is so important. We've seen the West Coast Conference go to a format for years where they give automatic buys into the semis for the top 2 teams. And you get these wildly elongated brackets where all of the bottom teams have to play so many more games to advance. The Sun Belt has adopted that sort of format, and so have others. There's such an advantage to get an automatic buy into the semis. In the West Coast Conference, Gonzaga is almost a shoe-in to go to the final, as they will likely have to play Oregon State, Seattle, somebody like that, as opposed to St. Mary's, who is likely to have to take on Santa Clara. But the teams at the bottom of the West Coast Conference, you have to win 5 games in 5 days to get there. So there's a huge top-heavy advantage there. Very similar play out in the Sun Belt, where you had a lot of compression at the top of the Sun Belt standings, and teams like Texas State, South Alabama, App State, all capable of potentially getting that number 2 seed, but it didn't fall that way with the tiebreakers. So those teams are going to have to win many more games in order to get to the final than, say, a team like Marshall, who gets that auto buy.
Absolutely, Marshall number 2 there, and that's a great point here. It is very important to look at those situations. Man, it makes it more grueling, but if a team can just get hot and stay hot, and sometimes you benefit from just not from playing every day or every other day, and then the other team, if they've been off too long, maybe they start out a little rusty. You look at a first half total or first half side. Let's get into these tournaments, my man. And we're just going to go over the ones we have odds on, and we'll pass if we don't want to discuss it because we don't think there's a play. I'm sure Josh knows about every team, so it's usually they just doesn't have a play. Atlantic Sun Conference Tournament is where we're starting, Josh. You have Austin Peay at plus 205, Central Arkansas plus 250, Queens and Lipscomb in the plus 400 ranges. What are your thoughts about this one? I think Josh froze a little bit here, actually. So I will jump into this. For the Atlantic Sun, I have Central Arkansas at plus 250 and Austin Peay at plus 205. I kind of like both of these, to be honest with you. Josh, I think you're back now. I'm actually going with with both of these plays. What you're doing here is combining. I think there's just a big difference between Austin Peay and Central Arkansas together over the rest of the conference. Kind of like Lipscomb a little bit, but I think if I can just kind of play these two against the field, I actually get blended odds of minus 156 if you do the math. So I'm taking both Austin Peay and Central Arkansas for those reasons. If you look at the numbers, efficiency, especially since February 1st, 146 is where you get Central Arkansas, and they have the number 1 D in the conference and number 3 on offense. So I like both Austin Peay and Central Arkansas.
Yeah, I think Central Arkansas is playing the best basketball down the stretch. The one thing that would concern me about Austin Peay is they've lost 2 games in a row. They lost to Central Arkansas on their home floor last Wednesday, and then they had a chance to grab the number 1 seed and threw up an absolute Saturday afternoon stinker against Bellarmine. Could not get any stops in the second half. I think Bellarmine scored 65 points in the second half. And so I've liked Austin Peay a lot this season. They're just playing very poorly down the stretch. They needed a last second bucket to beat North Florida, who was finished at the bottom of the league. They only beat Jacksonville by 4 points. And it just has not looked as good as I would have hoped for a team coming in having aspirations to secure the number 1 seed. I like Central Arkansas. I think they're playing very good basketball. But I do believe that this is a league where if you wanted to do a little beer bet banger money, so to say, on a team like Bellarmine who can bury the 3 ball, they play a very good offensive fluid system. I think there's a chance that a long shot could win a couple of games, get themselves into the semis. And at 55-1 or 60-1, if you get one of those teams that are in the semis, you're going to be in such a good equity position on the wager. So this is a league where I think you play one of the favorites like Central Arkansas. And I don't hate Austin Peay. I just wish they were playing a little better. But maybe have a secondary wager on one of those long shots so you can try to get the best of both worlds here. That's how I would attack the ASUN.
Yeah, that's another great way of doing it. Central Arkansas was going to be my only bet, but I decided just to take them both against the field. But it definitely them and Bellarmine would not be a terrible situation as well. I'm not sure if they're on the same side of the bracket. I have to relook at that, but that is a great way of attacking that one as well. What about the Big South? This is played neutral in Tennessee. What do you have for the Big South, Josh? We have High Point as a massive favorite at -160. Then you got Winthrop plus 290, Asheville plus 1600, Radford plus 1300. And then you got little Charleston Southern there at 30-1. That a person like yesterday, I was on his show. What do you think about the Big South? And Duck is freezing again. So let me say what I have. I don't have any bets in this one. I think that High Point is that much better than the rest of them. So, in my opinion, I really looked at Winthrop, but I decided not to go with Winthrop. So I actually don't have a play in this one. There's Josh again. I'm going to test my internet while you talk, Josh.
Yeah, the Big South is one of those leagues that is real top heavy. I think that High Point and Winthrop are the 2 best teams in this league. I think a team that would be an early exit watch out would be Radford. I look at Presbyterian, who took these guys to double overtime. The first meeting was tied up at the half. I think Radford is just so streaky with their shooting, and if the shots aren't falling, it could really look a little ugly for them. This is a top heavy tournament. And so the one team that I would want to place a bet on would be High Point. But there is a little bit of potential. You look at teams 3 through 7, they're really all about the same. Charleston Southern had a lot of close losses and is probably a little bit better than what their record would suggest. And so when you look at Charleston Southern having to square off against Winthrop, in the opening round. If there was any chance at all that they could win that game, then they could win the second game, and then they'd be in the final against High Point. So at 30-1, I think you could maybe sprinkle a little bit of money on Charleston Southern, but the overwhelming favorite here is High Point. They're the most athletic team, the most well coached. They're a superior basketball program here. So the large wager for me would be on High Point.
Absolutely, I would definitely look towards towards that as well. And I'm just passing on this in general, but I think a game by game basis might be something that you and I could find some value on, Josh. How about the Horizon League played in Indianapolis here at the end, but at first starts out on the home courts, Duck? What do you think about this one? What do you think about the Horizon League? I think Josh might be having some
Play
internet
an
issues.
opening round game today.
And Josh is going to come out in really quick here. So for me, I like Robert Morris. I took plus 320 on them. I think Robert Morris is just the better team. And if you look, it's more of a play against Wright State for me. Robert Morris is number 76 since February 1st on Bart Torvik, which is huge in my opinion. I think that, if you want to look at a more of a long shot, I kind of like Green Bay some. I think Green Bay at 10-1 is a decent long shot. So I'm putting a little bit on Green Bay as well, but I'm playing against Wright State because they have not been hot down the stretch. And Robert Morris ranking number 76 on Bart Torvik is huge for me. And this is also a tournament that reseeds. So it's going to make it easier on Wright State. Yet I just think that Robert Morris in that number 2 spot also benefits.
Yeah, I think the Horizon League is such a unique format in the fact that the first couple of rounds are played at campus sites. You have an opening round game today, and then the rest of that'll finish up tomorrow and Wednesday. And then they reseed. You get teams that'll your additional buys when they get to Indianapolis. The Horizon League is one of those tournaments that routinely just experiences a ton of chaos. And I don't see a lot of separation outside of the top 2. When you look at teams 3 through 7, Northern Kentucky has some strong wins. IPFW probably has the best player in the conference. They'll always have a chance here. It's just one of those wide open leagues where truly anybody can beat anybody. When you look at some of the teams that are power rated in this league, Wright State would probably be 3-point favorites over Northern Kentucky on a neutral, 5-point favorites over Youngstown State. There's just so much parity in the Horizon League. I do not think that putting a play in on Wright State would be a wise move here. I just don't see there's a lot of value in the number. If you wanted to look at a long shot, I mean, Green Bay is so well coached. Doug Gottlieb has done a great job in year 2 there with the Phoenix. IPFW could be worth a look. Northern Kentucky at 20-1 is a team that I think could win a couple of games here. It's a wide open league, and there should be expected chaos once again this year in the Horizon League.
All right, well, there you have it. And Robert Morris is now plus 280, so it went down a little bit here from where I got it. Plus 270 are our friends at FanDuel, where actually FanDuel in general has a little bit better odds on everything. So I love our partners over at FanDuel. Make sure you check out FanDuel and get these wonderful Horizon League odds. All right. Why don't we talk a little? I see the Metro Atlantic out there. I didn't get into this one yet, to be honest with you. I like betting unders in this division or this conference, but you don't got teams like Niagara there anymore. And there is 10 teams in this tournament. What are your thoughts?
I think it's wide open at the top. I think Merrimack and Siena both have a chance along with St. Peter's. Marist was a team I liked at the beginning of the season, but they've had devastating injuries to 2 or 3 players. I think a bet on Marist is drawing dead. Quinnipiac can beat them. Merrimack has played a really good defensive style under Joe Gallo, and his defense really locks you down in the second half. You want to bet unders in Merrimack in game situations, and this is another league where I wouldn't be surprised if any of the top 4 were to come out of it as the champion. I think Siena and Merrimack are the most talented teams in this league, but really it could be them, St. Peter's, Quinnipiac. It could be any of those 4 that I think have a chance to win this league. The bottom of the league is very bad. Marist is not at full strength, and I just don't expect a lot of chaos until the top 4 advance to the semis.
Yeah, it is wide open at the top too. I do agree. A little injury kind of hurt some of these teams. Yeah, you make a lot of sense there, and that's why I'm staying away from one. But one tournament I won't be staying away from is the Missouri Valley and Arch Madness, my friends. Little Arch Madness action. This just came out this morning, so I had to jump on the numbers this morning. Maybe it came out last night, and I was sleeping by then. I was beat. But I think Duck can probably guess what I like in this one. So I'm going to let Duck go first in the Missouri Valley.
Well, the way to bet this tournament is to bet every game first half under. That's been profitable for 15 years. I don't hate Northern Iowa. Who do you like in this one?
Belmont. And I knew you'd like Northern Iowa because that was your buy low team last week when we talked. And I like Belmont as my possible sleeper. Belmont, that game last night, it didn't affect their seeding. And that was against, I think it was Illinois State. And you know what? I do like Illinois State as a team. I just think Belmont is better when motivated. And Illinois State wanted that game. It was the end of their season. Belmont, they're shooting air balls with like 2 minutes left. I was watching it and I'm like, this is not the Belmont that I've been watching all year. So I think that the fact that they lost that game did me a favor, Duck. I do not think that I was going to get plus 160 on Belmont unless they lost that game. I think it would have been more like plus 120 or something like that. So I want to thank Belmont for losing that game because I'm taking them to win this tournament. And I think they're going to be dancing by the end of the week.
I'll tell you one other thing too interesting about the Missouri Valley. Valparaiso 35 or 40 to 1. They swept Bradley in the regular season. They split with Illinois State, playing pretty decent basketball down the stretch. They've won 7 of 9 going into this tournament. If you're looking for a long shot with a juicy price tag, Valpo has played some pretty decent basketball. They took Belmont to the wire twice and have wins against Illinois State. They have wins against Bradley. They have wins against Illinois Chicago. I think if you're wanting a little long shot value, if you're listening in and you want to take something real juicy in this league and you have a team in Valparaiso that is playing their best basketball at the end of the season, they've already beaten some of the top teams. They've shown they can play with Belmont. 35 or 40 to 1 isn't too bad there on Valparaiso.
That's a great point because, Valpo's been playing really well. They have 17 and 14 now. They won 4 of their last 5 games against teams like Bradley, Illinois, Chicago, teams kind of ranked pretty high. This Missouri Valley conference is a pretty dang good conference. I would like to see them face off against the Atlantic 10 this year. I almost feel like Missouri Valley might be better, because the Atlantic 10 was always that first conference that we thought about, that wasn't like, a power conference in basketball. But now I would say maybe just the total efficiency of the Missouri Valley would be better. So, yeah, I don't hate that at all. Let's move on to the Northeast Conference tournament winner and LIU minus 200, one of the bigger favorites this year. Kind of almost get into the Gonzaga numbers, not the Gonzaga of previous years, of course, but then you got Central Connecticut at plus 400, Mercyhurst plus 650, Lemoyne plus 1,000, and then teams that we used to like Wagner at plus 66,000, 60 to 1. Geez, what are your thoughts about this one?
I have bets on Stonehill, Wagner, and Fairleigh Dickinson to win this conference. Stonehill was 60 to 1, Wagner 70 to 1, and Fairleigh Dickinson 150 to 1. And the reason is this is a bad league. This is down there with the SWAC and the MEAC as far as aggregate power rating is concerned. And I've got to tell you, Long Island is the deserved favorite, and rightfully so, but there is absolutely very little separation between Central Connecticut State as the 2 seed, and you go all the way down the bottom, and you look at Stonehill, Fairleigh Dickinson, Wagner, and how these teams are power rated. It would not take much for any of these teams to pull an upset and get to the semis, and then you'll be in a real good equity position. And this is where I talk about shopping around. If you look at some of the odds that are available at the books that you're quoting, these are some pretty juicy prices. Wagner over at another book is 16 to 1. Stonehill was 25 to 1. Fairleigh Dickinson was 50 to 1. That's much different wager than 150 to 1. So I made these 3 wagers hoping that just at least one of these teams can win an opening round game, which is very, very possible. If 2 of them win, then I'll be
Duck's having a few internet problems here.
But
yeah, this tournament reseeds. So the whole thing about this one is that LIU is always going to get the best draw, and then it's just kind of up to the rest of them. But I will say, Duck, if somebody knocks out like Stonehill or Wagner, or like one of those teams knock out LIU, then you're going to be sitting pretty here, because one of those big favorites could certainly come in and make some noise in this tournament. The Ohio Valley. This is at the Ford Center in Evansville, Indiana. And I'm passing on this one. Tennessee State's plus 220, UT Martin's plus 370, Morehead State plus 400, Southeast Missouri State plus 400. And then it gets bigger than that. I got no play in this one. The Ohio Valley Conference is, I feel like this is one of those that I could see the top 4 winning. I'd be kind of surprised if I did look at Edwardsville. I will say that I did take a second class. I thought their number might be the one that's off a little, but I feel like it should be that the prices are correct.
Yeah, in the Ohio Valley Conference, they do get the formatting where the top 2 seeds get automatic buys into the semis, and so there's real advantageous setup for Tennessee State and Morehead State. I think Tennessee State's been playing the best basketball. They have the best offensive team, so I would probably look that way. But I do not. This is one of the few that I do not have a bet on this conference tournament at current. Tennessee Martin's played really, really good defense all season, and that defense can keep those guys in games. But OVC hoops is just such seat of your pants hoops. Some of the teams play with frenetic pace. Some of them can't shoot the ball. Some of them get really hot and streaky from deep. Hard to predict this one, I will say. I think Tennessee State has a chance to win it, but beyond that, I just don't know.
Patriot League. Oh, well, before that, Oven Fresh has a comment. Yeah, he ripped up his Iowa State to win the Big 12. I'm guessing, obviously, that was a season ticket, and not a conference, because those aren't out yet. But it was a very bad performance, and I'm pissed because I paid a premium for that, and I still had line value by closing line against Texas Tech, but Texas Tech for some reason just is playing out of their freaking minds. It's like, hey guys, why didn't you play like that with JT Toppin? Maybe you guys would have been the undefeated team, and so it's just crazy how up and down that this team can be. But I will say, though, Oven Fresh, I might be on Iowa State next week for the Big 12 tournament, because this probably just helps their number coming in. And they seem to play that tournament very well in the past with Coach O over there. So I'm not giving up on them from that perspective. But dude, don't worry, I've ripped up a few season tickets myself this year.
Yeah, and it's so hard because some of these teams have such golden situations or setups, and I thought that was a spot for Iowa State, and they just didn't show up. And it was credit to Texas Tech for rising to the occasion without JT Toppin. I thought they'd be a much different team without him on the defensive end. And it's college hoops, man. A widely varied. That can happen from time to time.
And they already had 4 losses while Arizona had 2. So that ticket was probably done before, let's face it, that week, my man. But they just like BTA says here, they do show up for the conference tourney. So let's hope they don't blow anyone out here, and we can get a good number on them. Patriot League, Navy minus 180, Colgate plus 475, Lehigh plus 900, Boston U plus 950, American plus 1100. Then it gets bigger from there. What are you doing for the Patriot League?
Yeah, I tweeted this out last night. I saw a book that had Navy mispriced, and I was actually able to get down a pretty decent sized wager amount. So I bet Navy minus 120. Navy is 10 points better than anybody in this league. They're senior led. They've got a great inside-outside game with Kehoe and Austin Benini. Jinwoo Kim can hit the 3 ball. They play really stout defense. They block and alter shots, which is something we don't see a lot at the Patriot League level. And I just don't foresee Navy. This is another tournament structure where they're played on campus sites, and so Navy will be at home for all 3 games. I don't foresee the middies having a ton of trouble here. If I was really scraping to try to find a long shot, Lehigh is 10-1, and Lehigh has been surging in the last month of the season, and they actually had the chips fall to where they got the 2 seed. And so I could see them getting to the final. And if you do have a 10-1 or a 9-1 on Lehigh in the final, you'd be in a good equity position there with the wager. But if you look at any power ratings with credibility out there, Navy's 10 points better than everybody else. They're senior led. They have real motivation to step up here, as this Navy team has struggled in Patriot League tournament play in the past and have failed to get the job done. I think they get it done this year. This is Navy or nothing for me.
Duck, we didn't even talked since last week, and both of us saw that minus 120 and attacked it immediately. This was definitely mispriced at that book that we both betted at, most likely. And it's a very popular book, let's say. And they didn't factor in these campus sites or something, but it, Navy is like 77th on since February 1st on Bart Torvik. Lehigh is 276th, and Colgate is like in the 280s themselves. I mean, this is a massive discrepancy here, and the fact that Navy's going to have it Colgate 291. This used to be Colgate's conference, as we all remember, but this year it's Navy's, and Navy's already up to minus 190 in some books, and that should keep going up because I still think there's value on there. But I will say, I put a sprinkle on Boston University, and I think Boston University at 10-1 is the second best team, and they're ranked 131 since February 1st. So they're the second best team in this conference since February 1st, and they have the best offense hitting threes. And so I'm on the top with both sides. I have Navy and Boston U. One of them is going to get passed. Clearly, the bottom side with Lehigh and Colgate is much worse. So I really love your play here, and I think we're both on the same side.
Yeah, and Colgate could be intriguing. They can be streaky from outside, but Jalen Cox, their best player by far, missed the regular season finale, and I would want to check his status. If you like Colgate, they should get past Loyola Maryland, but you want to make sure Cox is healthy because the offense does not hit on all cylinders without him in the lineup.
Let's go to the SoCon, and we have East Tennessee State at plus 185, Furman plus 425, Mercer plus 475, Samford plus 500, Wofford plus 800, and it gets lower from there. What are your thoughts on the SoCon?
Wide open league. I think the top 6 or 7 teams could win this league. I think that there is a lot of parity between East Tennessee State, Mercer, Wofford, Samford, Furman. They all can get streaky from 3. Wofford has so many dangerous players that if they're hitting the outside shot, they're tough to defend against. Furman hasn't quite played their best basketball this season yet. Samford is dangerous with Jaden Booth. East Tennessee State is probably the creme de la creme in this league, but they're just priced so ineffectively at plus 185 that it's hard to really want to get in on them. I would say if you like East Tennessee State, maybe just wait until they get to the final and you could bet them there, maybe get a worse price, but I think Wofford and Samford would both have an opportunity to potentially win this tournament. So that's probably where I would look at the current pricing.
Samford is what I bet. It's plus 550. It's going down a little bit. It's my best bet probably. This team since February 1st is 135th in a bad conference, let's face it. But that's pretty high ranking since February 1st because you're ranking them with all the other teams. And East Tennessee State is 204th since February 1st. I think that Samford should be the favorite. This East Tennessee State team barely won at home to Samford by 1 point, and they lost to Samford already on the road. And Samford's just the red hot team right now, and Samford's the better team. I like Samford. I think this number is ridiculous personally, and I really like that number at plus 500, plus 550 you can get right now.
Yeah, just a team that's playing really good basketball, defeated Mercer, defeated East Tennessee State, took Mercer to the wire in game 2 against them, really taking care of business, and dangerous outside shooting team when the shots are falling.
Let's go to the Summit League. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't do a thorough job on this one because I just kind of looked at it, and I've had some not the great, just over the years, South Dakota State, South Dakota, North Dakota State, they're weird teams. Sometimes they play slow, yet their games go way over. You look at Denver, the best overs team in all of basketball, man, hitting at like an 80% clip to the over. So that's been fun this year. I was on some of those Denver overs here. But just don't bet on Kansas City. That's all I have to say. Just don't, whatever you do, don't bet Kansas City.
Yeah, this is a unique tournament played in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so it's a neutral site, but South Dakota and South Dakota State definitely have home field advantage based on the location of this tournament. It's a tournament that I've attended many times in person, as I used to live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where this was held. It's held at a fun venue. It's a unique venue that none of these teams play at routinely during the regular season, so that can lead to some first half unders in this tournament, and also dogs generally do well in game-by-game situations. If you get first round mismatch, the 1-8, the 2-7, generally those big dogs do cover the number in those single game settings. St. Thomas and North Dakota State are the two best teams in this league. Nobody plays any defense in this league except North Dakota State, and I think that could carry them through to the top. But if you're looking for a long shot here, South Dakota State is a far cry from what they were, but they have generally played very well in this tournament. If there's a team that I would want a long shot on, it's them. I think with the familiarity and a little bit about how they've been playing down the stretch could be okay. But I would want North Dakota State or St. Thomas probably as my primary bets in this league.
The Jackrabbits. Yeah, they used to own this, and they've been one of the better teams in this conference, minus the big Oral Roberts year. But yeah, they won it in 2024. 2025, they almost won it, but lost to Denver. But yeah, South Dakota State has really performed very well in this tournament. What does that move us to? Oh, the Sun Belt. You already touched on their crazy looking bracket that is as long as train tracks.
Yeah, and just a conference that rewards teams that finished at the top. And it's unfortunate that it played out this way because if you look at the Sun Belt, there was probably 8 teams that have a realistic chance of winning the Sun Belt. And so there's very little separation. You had Troy that won the league at 12-6, but then you had a logjam of other teams that were 11-7, all the way down to Texas State and Arkansas State. And those teams really get punished. Arkansas State would have to win 3 more games than Marshall or Troy, even though they finished just 1 game below in the standings. So Ark State, Texas State, South Alabama really do get penalized here. And I'm not sure that that's reflected in the current pricing. A lot of people like Coastal Carolina at 14-1, but I think that pricing tells me that they get bounced in their first game and don't make it to Marshall. Marshall and Troy have a significant advantage. I think the best team in this league is Appalachian State. They can get hot from 3. They've got some guys that come off the bench and can just absolutely shoot the nets off. They play very sound defense. The problem with App State is they cannot shoot foul shots, and if they could, they'd be the favorite in my opinion, but their poor foul shooting has led teams to stay in games, and it's become a real problem. If I wanted to bet anything here, it would be Appy State, but I'm real interested to see where you're going here with this.
I'll tell you, this is like you broke it down well, said everything right, and it's awesome. James Madison is kind of where I'm going now. They're 30-1 at DraftKings.
Very hot team.
Our friends at FanDuel have them at 40-1, and that's where I'm taking it. Much better odds at FanDuel. And the truth is, Josh, the money line roller is better than all this, man. You go and put, whatever amount down, $50, $10, $5, whatever the hell you want, and start rolling the profit over with your bet and keep multiplying that up. And that could be a big, big payday for you. James Madison kind of has the pedigree of being a big winner, not just in football, but if you remember, their basketball team was fantastic over the past 2 years, being in the NCAA tournament, upsetting teams like Wisconsin until they ran into Duke. Now, you're right. It's just, you look at the top and they're just so fortunate that, Marshall and Troy only have to play 2 games. But if James Madison's hot, they're blowing out teams. They're not super tired at the end. Just them being hot could actually, bounce one of these teams coming in here. And that would be fun. I like James Madison here for my long shot. So that's probably my longest shot that I'm taking, Duck.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I think this could come down to one of those teams that are slated 5th through 9th that do get hot, that do win a couple of games. And you could actually see a situation where these teams get a couple games under their belt. They're familiar with the shooting in the neutral venue. They've kind of been lathered up already. They're in rhythm. And you talk about taking a week off at this time of the year, which is what Troy and Marshall will have done, 10 days off, as a matter of fact. They're not going to play till March 8th. So just interesting to see the setup here. And if you get one of those teams that has to play maybe 2 or 3 extra games, but they get hot, there's some continuity, they're feeling good about themselves, that could be a team that makes a move up in this bracket.
100%. All right, let's move on to the final one. We have odds on West Coast Conference. You got the Zags at -210. You got St. Mary's at +230. And then you have Santa Clara at plus 700-ish, depending upon what book you're looking at here. What do you think about the West Coast Conference that's always really belonged to Gonzaga?
This is where this unique formatting really started. The West Coast Conference was the first to do these super buys and give their top teams supreme access to the semifinals. And I think it's worked out well for this top heavy league. If we start at the bottom, I don't think there's a lot of serious threats in the 7 through 12 sort of range. And I'm assuming those teams will see some early exits. San Francisco has been so up and down this season, and I just don't see a lot of value there. Santa Clara is a very dangerous team and a team that I think is going to be playing with desperation, as they're a team that's kind of a fringe NCAA tournament team. They've come on strong under Herb Sendek of late. They really need to get to the final, and I think it would be a fascinating conversation if Santa Clara were to do that. But Gonzaga has essentially an automatic bye to the final. They're going to play San Francisco or Oregon State and blast either one of those teams to get to the final, where they'll play likely St. Mary's or Santa Clara. So you can find a book out there with the Zags priced at -155. That's the bet I would make now. It's a bit juicy, but I think Gonzaga there's no question they're in the final. And then you can just reassess what you want to do. They'll likely be 4 or 5 point favorites over whoever they play. So you'll probably get about a plus 190 the other way. So you could buy out if you wanted to, or just let the wager ride. But the only way I could look here is with the Zags.
Yeah, the Zags will be -250 in the final game, and they're -210 now. There's no value there. I feel like they kind of laid down against St. Mary's Saturday night. I just kind of feel like did it affect their seeding in the tournament? Maybe maybe they're a 3 and not a 4 or not a 2. If they're hoping for that, they could be a 4 seed instead of a 3. I'm not into that so much, but if you
But you
want,
talk about two. You talk about St. Mary's. That was the final game as conference rivals between these two, with Gonzaga going to the re-faced Pac-12. And you've got a 20-year coaching history. Mark Few and Randy Bennett know each other inside and out. Every one of those games could be coin flipped. It wouldn't change my sentiment if Gonzaga would have won that game or lost the game by 20, because that was the spot for St. Mary's. It was just such a huge home game in that rivalry for the final time. You got 25 years of history between those two coaches.
100%. And Gonzaga was winning that game at half too. So, St. Mary's did a fantastic job, and they're going to be playing again. They're just not going to be playing as conference rivals again. They'll be scheduling, I'm sure, the non-conference games before January and be playing each other. And so that hopefully that still lives. Like, we still kind of see USC, Notre Dame, and big schools, obviously, and in college football. But you never know how long that's going to last, because money kind of ruins things in some cases, like it did a little bit in college football. But here we are, man. Lots of fun stuff here. I think that St. Mary's, if you like them, I would money line roll over them, because since they're playing Santa Clara, you're going to get a bet probably -180 or -200, and then you can roll over that against Gonzaga, where you're going to get +2, 180 +200, which would probably calculate to +300. When it, Josh, I would say it better to do the money line rollover, an easy one, because you only have 2 games with St. Mary's.
You could do that. Otherwise, your friends over there at FanDuel have the Zags listed at -155. And then at the other book that we're talking about, you could get St. Mary's at +230, and you could just kind of put yourself in a positive position with the positive vigorish either way there, where you wouldn't have to sweat that out. But I'd say, +230 for St. Mary's, you're probably looking at a pretty decent money line rollover, since they just have to win the 2 games. And you're right, they're probably going to be laying 4 against Santa Clara, which would put them about 180, 190 on the money line. And then you take all that proceeds and you roll it into an underdog play against the Zags. That would be the way I would play that.
Yeah, 100%. Let's move on to the next topic. Anything next week? We just touched on Iowa State, that, anything 8-1 or better for Iowa State, would be interesting to me, because Houston and Arizona are probably going to be the favorites in that conference, and Kansas will be lurking. I feel like Texas Tech even has earned themselves a better number, probably. So, anything next week that, of course we don't have numbers, everything's number dependent, but anything you can see being undervalued in some of the bigger conferences next week.
I think Ohio State showed a lot to me yesterday, being able to control after going down by 8 points against Purdue and just controlling the last 30 minutes, a team that is playing just with their hair on fire. The defensive intensity was incredible. The shot making and making contested threes, all the whole second half against Purdue was incredible. They're going to play their way into the NCAA tournament. I think when we look forward to the rest of this week, they go on the road to Penn State and then they play Indiana. They can absolutely win both those games. I think Ohio State's a team that can win 2 or 3 games in the Big Ten tournament, really get hot and build up that sentiment to come towards Selection Sunday. I won't be surprised at all if we see Ohio State's name called in the field of 68 come Selection Sunday.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, throwing out the big dogs here with Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, they have played with a lot of heart, and they, when they get hot, they're hard to beat, and they're hitting a lot of threes. And it's just, I wish this team was more consistent, but maybe it's now for Ohio State. I find that interesting. If the thing about Duke is, can they get knocked off? I mean, you saw them against Virginia, and they just pulverized Virginia. Virginia had no shot. Every single player is playing good for Duke, and I tried to fade Duke a couple times. It didn't work for me. I didn't bet them against Virginia, but is there anybody in the ACC that could make some noise? Remember, NC State's done a few things. Remember, Clemson's done a few things. I don't know. It would have benefit Duke to lose this so they can win the NCAA tournament. There's always that discussion, but the past few years have bucked that with UConn and Florida. Is there a team that you'd mess with in the ACC?
I mean, maybe Clemson. They're right now slated at the 5 spot, and they would play probably like a Wake or Notre Dame type of opponent in the first round, and then they'd have to play a team like Miami or North Carolina. Clemson would be certainly capable of beating either one of those teams, and then that would set up a semifinal matchup with the Dukies. And the final score wasn't necessarily reflective of it, but Clemson played those guys pretty close about a month ago. And I think, Clemson is a team with the way they play offense and with their slow pace style that if they're not hitting shots, they can kind of go into a little funk. And we've seen that over the last 3 weeks of the season, but this team had won 17 out of 18 at one point this year and really could get hot. So I think if they can find it a little bit, they're a team that could make a little bit more of a deeper run than you might expect. I think they're safely in the field, but could maybe improve their NCAA tournament seeding positioning. Other than that, in the ACC, I mean, maybe a team like Louisville can get hot again and really start to pour on the offense on their opponents like they had earlier in the season.
How come Miami hasn't played Duke?
Because there's 18 teams in that league.
Freaking 18 teams. There's 18 teams in the Big Ten. I thought they all played each other. Maybe they didn't. Okay. That's just interesting when teams are playing each other twice, and it's. I don't know. I would look at Miami, even though they're not going to be the greatest odds, or an SMU maybe, because SMU is actually like the second highest rated team from a conference perspective. If you look at KenPom, I know Virginia's there too, but yeah, that doesn't hurt. Big East, is it UConn's, or can St. John's do it again after that embarrassing loss that they come out and pulverize Villanova by 30 some? It's just so funny to see the yin and the yang with St. John's.
Yeah, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater on St. John's. And so I know that the second half performance was disgusting. We know they missed 21 straight shots against UConn. They scored however many points they scored in the second half, and it looked gross. But you get a stinker like that out of the way, and you put on the film, and you kind of get humbled and embarrassed a little bit, and you can use that as motivation later on in the season. I think the Johnnies are a dangerous team, not only in the Big East tournament, but going forward. They play with just such continuity. The defensive intensity is really – it's hard to prepare for some of the on-ball pressure that they put on you, and then they get out and run out on the offensive end. I think St. John's will be just fine.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm curious what their number is going to be. If it's 5-1 or greater, or 4-1, that's when I'll kind of look at it a little bit more against a UConn who's going to be probably plus 200 or so. That's what I'm probably thinking in this conference. Seton
Hall can play with anybody.
Seton Hall just has that great coach in Shaheen Holloway that just motivates the hell out of them, right? That's kind of that's what I've seen with them. They just play with a lot of heart. They just don't quite have the talent, but they play with a ton of heart out there. And Yeah, it's funny.
They took UConn to the wire twice.
Yeah, they did. You're right. They did. Mountain West. The Mountain West is interesting too. I find it interesting because they're not going to get much for at large this year. It's going to be San Diego State has gotten their guy back, right? They had an injury. Pardon?
It was Guath who was out.
Yeah, Bagoon Guath, and then he's been playing. He's a 7-foot center, and he's been awesome lately. And yeah, they just lost away to New Mexico by 5 points. I don't know. I would look at them a little bit, maybe. The Mountain West is funny because I love seeing Grand Canyon in this division, this conference. I love the way that Utah State's been playing for the most part, but Utah State's kind of faltered a little bit too, losing 2 of their last 3. They just beat Grand Canyon by 5. I think the Mountain West is kind of open.
Yeah, I think it's open. I mean, you look at the teams, we'll go bottom up, but you look at teams like Wyoming, UNLV, Colorado State that can be pesky, and they've all won 10 games in league play, and it can just cause problems. Boise State's defense is not what they once were, but still a pesky out. Nevada's tough in the right situation. I think the winner of this league should come down to Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico, but crazier things in the Mountain West have happened. I remember a Larry Nance-led Wyoming team winning this league as a 7, and there's been other teams that have made deep runs as a lower seed. So there's a chance that maybe somebody else makes a little bit of a run. You do get the top 4 that get buys into the quarters, and so not really a tremendous amount of advantage for being a top seed, but I would assume, you mentioned in the Mountain West, you're not going to get a tremendous amount of at-large activity, and it's really a shame if this league doesn't get 3 teams in. That would really be a shame because we don't need a 17-15 Auburn in there over one of these teams for sure. But I think Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico.
Auburn's dead to me. Don't mention Auburn. But they're going to try to get him in. Bruce Pearl's already talking.
They're going to try to get him in.
Yeah. No, I want to see Utah State, New Mexico State for sure. And then, San Diego State has earned it in the past. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing at least 3 here. But the problem is one of those are going to have to win the conference too, because I don't know if they're going to look too far past that. So I think they're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Futon Bet says UConn's winning it all. I'm guessing you mean the whole tournament and the whole NCAA tournament.
And they might.
Absolutely.
And they might. They might make a run. They could make a great coach. They have decent top-end talent. The comment wasn't that they couldn't win it all. We're trying to find value in the pricing of the Big East futures market without having lines available. So that was the spirit of the comment about Seton Hall taking them to the wire twice and St. John's being able to rebound. So UConn could win the whole thing. Absolutely, they could.
Absolutely. We're just looking for some sweet teams to try to.
Yeah, we got to talk. We got to talk about the MAC. We got to talk our darlings, Miami of Ohio, in the Mid-American Conference.
Okay.
They're finishing up their regular season this week. And I will say this, I think Miami of Ohio has been a real fun story. If they go through the regular season undefeated, which they're now projected to do, and they make a deep run in the MAC to the MAC title, if they were to lose in the MAC title, I think that team should get in. But I want to bet Akron in the MAC championship tournament. I want to bet Akron has the best talent in the MAC. They have the best. I think they have a really, really good coach in John Gross. You look at guys like Amani Lyles, Evan Mahaffey, Tabari Johnson. They're just so athletic on both ends of the floor that I hope the pricing comes out where I think it might, because I will absolutely want to bet Akron here in this tournament.
And Akron's number one in conference efficiency, both offense and defense. The only thing they don't do is get to the free throw line. So you hope at the end they're not just chucking up shots and draw some of those fouls, so that's important in tournament play. The refs seem to like charging to the rim, in general. Miami, Ohio, of course, number 2 and number 2. Both teams play very fast basketball. So, yeah, I'm going to be on Akron too. But I think that Miami, Ohio wins out. They're going to get in anyway. So look for a prop that shows over 1.5 teams to represent the MAC to make it into the NCAA tournament. That's what I'm looking for. And what you guys should be looking for is this man, Mr. Josh. He is one of the best small conference and big conference college basketball and college football bettors that I know. Mr. Josh Nunn. Josh, can you tell him where you can get your information?
Yeah, I'm at the Action Network, so we're starting our conference preview series. We're previewing all 32 of the college basketball leagues and going through tournament previews. Then we'll have some live reaction stuff when the NCAA tournament brackets get released. I do game previews, conference previews for that, and I've been all over in the college football circuit as well. You and I have spent some good time together on this program and on Spaces, and we look forward to continuing that. So definitely not hard to find there, and on Twitter as well at Step on a Duck.
Absolutely not far to find at all. Make sure you guys check out Josh Nunn at